Sarah Griffin, welcome to Not Real Art.
Thank you.
Oh
Thanks
my
for
God,
having
my first question is like, do should I call you Doctor Griffin? Because I think you maybe the only maybe we've had one no, we have had one other guest with a PhD in economics, but you have your PhD in English, no?
That's right.
Yeah.
And the doctor title is not necessary. Sarah's good.
Well, I have to ask. That's a hell of an accomplishment. Congrats on that PhD.
Thank you very much.
I mean, I barely made it through grade school, so the fact that you ascended to such heights, it's an inspiring story, and you're classing up the joint. Thank you so much for being
My
here.
pleasure.
Well, so as you know, our listeners don't know, we have a little bit of a connection because you were generous enough to come and participate in our Smart Talks series last year, where we were, having educational panels, informational panels for taking on hot topics for artists to come and listen and learn and network, and that was such a great event. Thank you for doing that. You
Oh,
just,
that
I
was
mean,
so
you
fun.
killed it that day.
Thanks. That was a great event. I had a great time.
Right. Well, Trisha was there too, right? Like, so, and I think you brought the shorties, like the kids were there. Like, it was like a family event. It was fantastic.
Everyone was there. Yes, it was fun for all ages. I don't know. My
It
kids,
was,
I don't know. You have to ask them.
well, yeah, it was fun for all ages. But I want to go back because I mean, you and I chatted. I barely talked to Trisha. It was just we chatted just a little bit. But I mean, take us back. Like, how did you guys connect?
So we connected in 2019.
Hmm.
Trisha owns a pretty well-known vintage furniture store here in LA called Pop-Up Home. I
Hmm.
was just doing private art consulting, and
Hmm.
she started selling the work of one contemporary painter who I was interested in for one of my clients. And so she said, "Yeah, stop by." And I went to see the work. Trisha and I got to talking, and it was one of those moments where everything is lining up, right? We were just so on the same page. We're talking about art, we're talking about representation. I'm telling her about all these great artists that I work with and, that I wish that I could do more for. And she's telling me how the art that she started selling is doing really well. And she sort of also wanted to do more. And we decided to just do one show together. On that same day that we met, we were like, let's just do a show. Let's
Right.
bring in the artists. I know people. She has a large following on social media and just kind
Yeah.
of see what happens. That was the initial conversation. Um, we started planning the show. I brought the artists in. Everyone was excited about it. We had found a space for it. And then the pandemic hit. And the show was off, the space was closed, everything was canceled, and we both kind of went our separate ways. And then Trisha called me maybe 6 months later and said, "Hey, I got this opportunity to open this huge space on Sycamore in West Hollywood. Would you want to bring the art in and see how it does?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? I'm not doing anything. I'm sitting at home just like everyone else. Yeah, let's do it and see what happens." I
Right.
called all the same artists back up and was just thrilled because they were so open to the idea. I had nothing to show for myself other than an idea, and they were all down. And so we started installing, and before we were even open, we sold our first piece just from someone walking by. He
Right.
saw what we were installing. He got super excited. He said, "I need to bring my friend back, tomorrow." And he and his friend both bought. We weren't even set up. We didn't even know how to take their money at that point. And we thought, it looks like we're onto something. It looks like there's a need for this.
Right on. Well, that's yeah. Of the tragedy that was 2020, this was a triumph that you guys were able to make lemonade out of those lemons.
I think 2020 was such a weird time because, as you said, there's tragedy everywhere you turn. It also was an interesting time for artists because it gave them the space and the time to really create.
Yeah.
And for those of us who work with artists, sort of the same thing where Trisha and I were able to just take an idea and go for it in a way that we may not have otherwise. And because we were able to stay open and the space was so large, it was 10,000 square feet at least, people were able to come, feel comfortable walking around. They're not too close to anyone else, and just look at beautiful things, which at the time was really hard to do. There weren't too many places to do that. Everyone's sitting at home, everyone's looking at their walls, thinking, I always wanted to put something there. I never had the time to do it, and all of a sudden it was the time to do it. So it really felt like, weirdly, this horrific year was actually the perfect time for this to happen.
Right, and with 10,000 square feet, you can kind of social distance, okay,
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. We said, you're going to feel totally comfortable here, right? No one is going to be in your space. Yeah.
But 10,000 square feet, that's daunting. I mean, were you intimidated? Like when you walked in there and you were like, oh my God, I mean, I gotta get to work.
Absolutely. When she first walked me through there, I said, okay, so we've got our work cut out for us. But again, I really did feel so strongly that I knew the right people whose work really needed to be seen.
Right.
And so part of it was just give me your biggest and your best, right? Let's just do this. So that it actually ended up really fun.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was one of those times where you feel like, I think you said this too, it's sort of like kismet, where it's like no, things are snapping together, right, in a way that's like, oh, okay, this is meant to be.
That's what it felt like. And really, aesthetically, Trisha and I are so aligned in a way that I haven't felt with anyone else. I don't know if she has either, where we don't even really have to talk that much about what the other one is doing, and things just come together. So she was curating furniture, I was curating art. We're talking a little bit about the things that we're finding and bringing, but there's no overarching plan. We just got everything in the space and put it up, and it was perfect, right? It was exactly what we wanted it to be. Yeah.
But by the way, not to put too fine a point on it, I mean, with a PhD in English, what do you know? What do you know about art? Like, let's. So let's go back to that. Yeah.
Yes. I will tell you, first of all, those of us with our PhDs in English like to think that we also know a lot about history, a lot about culture outside of literature. And so I was coming from a place where I really did feel like I deeply understand these pieces of art as cultural artifacts, as cultural objects. I understand where they're coming from. I understand what the references are, all of that. So I do feel like I'm coming from a different angle.
Right.
And I remember when we had our first, this is jumping ahead, but when we had our first solo show, I wrote the statement for it. And this woman who was deep art world came and read the statement. I showed her around. And then at the end of it was when she found out that I had a PhD in English. And she said, oh, now I understand why the statement reads that way, right? So it's definitely, we're both outsiders, right? Neither of us came through the art world. And we think that works to our benefit because we just have something a little bit different to say.
Hallelujah. I mean, we need more outsiders in the art world, right? We need more innovation. By the way, they knew that somebody else wrote that statement because it was comprehensible.
Right. Yes. We like to
enough
say
with the international art speak.
Yes. Yeah. A little bit of art speak, a little bit of academic jargon, and then make it something for everyone. Make it something that anyone who's just approaching art can read and feel like, I have an idea of what this show is, right? I have an idea of how to approach it. And that's the fun part.
Yeah, I'm reminded of that old statement, and I've heard it attributed to a few different people. I don't know actually who said it, but basically the statement kind of goes something like, anybody can make a simple idea complex, but it takes real genius to take a complex idea and make it simple. And, that's what we need to do, right? Like, yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's what the best curators do. It's what the best writers do, is absolutely distill something down to the essence.
Yeah.
And that's how we share knowledge.
Well, and also, like, I'm sorry, I'm going to get on a soapbox, but it's like, let's stop taking ourselves, we love what we do and we're serious about what we do, and what we do is important work, not just for the artists we serve, but for the world in terms of helping the world access culture, but at the end of the day, like, let's also have a sense of humor and enjoy the ride a bit and stop taking ourselves so damn seriously. There's enough precious people in our world. We need some folks who are gonna, maybe be a little bit less serious and have a little fun along the way, which is also part of the reason why, for example, this podcast is called Not Real Art. I mean, it is absolutely an intentional name that 9 out of 10 artists get the joke immediately.
Yep.
And serious collectors, serious gallerists, they never get the joke. they just don't get it.
That's great. Yes, I mean, I think it's so important. I think Trisha and I say all the time, there's a reason why everyone gets into art in the first place, and we don't want to forget that reason, right? And it's that it's fun, it's that it's beautiful, it's that it makes us feel a certain way. It's that when we have something in our home that we live with, it literally changes how the space feels. And we want people to lean into that. We have people come in all the time who say, I don't know anything about art, but, right?
Yeah.
And I always say, you don't have to know anything other than what you personally think about this piece, right? And it doesn't matter what any gallerist or any other artist or anyone thinks about it. What matters is, do you want to live with that? Do you want that piece in your house? And because if it makes you feel the way that you want to feel, that's the piece for you. You don't have to know more than that. It's not about knowing, it's about feeling. And that's what we try to create in the showroom, is a place that feels good. We want people to walk in and feel amazing. I think that's the big difference between us and a lot of white box galleries, where I think particularly as people of color, we walk in and feel like, I don't necessarily belong here. Are these people thinking I should even be here? Can I even afford anything that's on the walls? And the trick of it is, we often can. It's just made to feel uncomfortable. And so we really try 100%. To do the opposite.
100%. I love that line. I think that was a quote. You should quote yourself that you said, it's not what you think, it's how you feel. And I mean, that's, it reminds me, I had a conversation a while back with somebody, and I was saying, this whole argument or this whole notion that art is an economic asset that should be collected for some kind of economic appreciation. I'm like, for starters, art is a horrible investment. Like, number one. Okay. Like, let's just start with that. Okay. Number two, the people that are talking like that are millionaires and billionaires who are trying to avoid paying taxes, and are locking these things up in free storage or whatever. And that's a different game. I mean, God bless those people, whatever, that's fine. But where we live, in terms of trying to work with, emerging artists or emerging, collectors or whatever, I mean, my whole point is like, no. Art isn't an economic asset. Art is soul food.
Right.
Like you want to buy stuff that makes you feel good, that you want to look at every day. And by the way, that's all artists want from you too. Like, artists just want you to buy their work, take it home, and enjoy it every day.
That's right. Artists are so excited every time the right person finds the piece of art that speaks to them. And I do feel like that happens, right? It's somehow the right pieces always find their right collectors. Mm-hmm. That's what we want. That's what I want. That's what the artist wants. It's the collector wants. That's what we all want, right? And yeah, you're right that our collectors are not the people who are going to go put it into storage. Our collectors are living with their art. Many of our collectors are the first people in their family to collect art. So it's not something that they've been told is a financial tool, right? It's something that as they progress in their careers, as they have a little bit of, extra cash on hand to do something special for themselves, they figure out, this is something that I can do that feels really good, right? And that makes me want to bring people into my home, makes me want to host, the whole thing
Yeah.
makes the house feel like it's mine. So I love that. That's my favorite thing, is helping people find that piece that is special to them. And when people ask me, I of course get people asking me, well, is this going to appreciate? Am I going to make money on this? And I always say there's no way for me to make that kind of a promise, right? I can tell you who I think is amazing, but it doesn't mean that person's going to make you a lot of money. I can't, that's not why you should buy it from me, right? From me, it's buy it because you love it.
100%. And, and it is such a fascinating thing. I mean, because, there's so much misconception out there, and, this idea, like the idea of like affordability, right? It's like the way the way the art is, framed, so to speak, in these white cube galleries, it's sort of positioned as a luxury item, right? Mm-hmm. So suddenly it's like luxury item, boo, that's expensive. Can I afford that? And the reality is there is so much amazing affordable art out there. Okay. And just, empowering people to have a little bit of confidence, mm-hmm. In themselves, even, it's like you were talking about, people saying, well, what should I think or whatever. And it's like, I've told people, it's like, listen, as far as I'm concerned, you're the art expert. I'm like, what's your favorite color?
Right.
I mean,
yeah, you have a color you like. Yeah.
Yeah, let's red. Okay, let's go over here to the red section.
Exactly. And I do think in terms of it being a luxury item, you're right that there's a lot of affordable art. I feel like at most price points, though, when it comes to art, it feels like a stretch in the way that maybe a sofa doesn't, because the idea is I need a sofa, right? I have to have somewhere to sit. I don't have to hang anything on my wall, or I don't have to have a sculpture that I place here. My feeling is once you take that leap and you have that thing, you realize you do need to have that, right? It's part of your home in a different way than if you just go buy an open edition print somewhere. And so yes, it's going to cost more money than that open edition print, but it's also going to give you something that print doesn't. And right. For me, that's as you said, that's the soul of it. That's your life, right? That's everything. So for me, it is a necessity.
Well, and then there's also an interesting conversation to have around the fact that, well, number one, I don't trust people with empty walls. I think empty blank walls equal empty blank souls. We need the art, right? Yeah. So, but that being said, it's like, each individual deserves an individual space, right? Yeah. And if you're buying decor, mm-hmm. Which is a $6 billion category, wall decor, home decor. Mm-hmm. By some estimates, maybe it's even more than $6 billion now. But okay, fine. If the rest of us are supposed to go buy our so-called art at a Target or whatever the hell, mm-hmm. That is mass produced. The environmental impact of that, for example, is interesting. It's mass produced. It's not at all unique. And so spoil yourself a little bit, go out there, find unique objects that reflect your personality, reflect your character, make you feel good, create that vibe that you deserve, Yeah,
it's like the difference between buying fast fashion and going to a boutique. You're going to spend a little more money at this local boutique, but you're going to be in a relationship then with the artist who made it. You're going to have something that's just for you, that's super special, that makes you feel a certain way when you put it on. And honestly, I should also say, because I use the sofa example, that this does also exist in the furniture world. So everything that Trisha sells, they're one of a kind designer, incredible, beautiful pieces that, yes, have the same function as a sofa that you could get at Target or wherever. But
right. And by the way, I love Target. I'm not throwing shade on Target. I love Target.
Right. I will take a Target shopping spree, but for certain things, I do. Yeah. I do feel like there is value in giving yourself something that's a little bit special and a little more you.
Well, but it's a fascinating conversation because what is, like I'm Gen X, so 53, and I grew up, working class, Midwestern. You and I have a Chicago connection, by the way, because you're from Chicago, right?
I am, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we got to talk about that. But anyway,
okay.
the point is that growing up working class, middle class, kid in the Midwest suburbs of Chicago. Back in those days, like, my family, we were supposed to buy our art at the so-called art gallery in the mall, with the oil paintings, that were, replicated or whatever. And there were companies that produced that. I mean, actually, here's a cool story. So one of our grant winners, Albert, Cleophas, who you should maybe know, he's an incredible human, and he's getting up in years. He's like 80 now, maybe he's mid 70s, but anyway, he's getting up in years. But he and I met him through kind of a mutual friend, and he was on the podcast. And part of his story was that he, back in the day, in the 60s or whatever, here in LA, worked for one of these art manufacturers where they would employ professional artists to paint these paintings, and they would have an assembly line, and he said that they would, the artists would line up and they would each go down and paint that stroke or paint that thing. And then it was just an assembly line and they would just do that. Well, they all painted under aliases, right? Mm-hmm. Well, it turned out that his alias, I remembered because my mom had one of his paintings in our house, right? Wow. So the point is that, there's a whole segment of the population that feels like they're relegated to buying art, in some other venue, in some other place. And, and the reality is that you and I both know that there is so much amazing affordable art out there that most people can afford. They just need to know how to access it and how to get to it and have confidence in that. And that's, that's why I get excited about this issue, because I feel like that's our role, right? As evangelical art missionaries, spreading this news that, no, guys, you can too.
Yes, you can too. We have a special section on our website, art under $500, right?
Right.
There is art at any price point. You do just need to know where to find it. And those art factories still exist. My sister literally called me today and she was like, have you gone on Etsy? Because there are these, they call them original art, but they're clearly coming from an art factory. I said, I haven't actually seen them, but she was like, she goes, I know that they're actual artists on Etsy, but they're buried under this art factory stuff, and it's actually hard to find them. So yeah, she was asking the question, where else do I go, to find something that's real? And there are places.
Absolutely. Well, and then, I don't know if there's this talk about art factories. It's interesting, this trend, because then you have like this company, Andy Blank. I don't know if you know these guys. Have you heard of these guys?
No.
Check them out, because they're really bringing a level of modernity and polish, and sex appeal, to what they're calling art, what maybe some would call decor. But it's all happening, right? Like they're, and that's cool. I mean, it doesn't always have to be at a one-on-one or whatever, but it's all about what makes you feel good. But yeah, it's people just need to know how.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm all for a limited edition print, right?
100%.
Right. Yeah. I think those are great. We've done a couple solo shows this year and we've had prints at both of those that I feel like are an amazing option at a smaller size, because not everyone can put a wall-sized piece of art up, and and then at a more budget-friendly price.
Right. Well, I tell you what, we should run for office because I think we could solve all the world's problems.
I think we get votes. Yeah.
It's a powerful ticket. Okay, so let's talk about Chicago. So let me just give you a little context. I'll go first. So I was born, ironically, in the same hospital as Michael Jackson in Gary, Indiana, and I grew up in Northwest Indiana, about 40 miles outside of Chicago. I graduated from Columbia College in Chicago and lived downtown for years and years and years until I moved to LA in '01. That's my quick story. What's your Chicago story?
So I was born at Evanston Hospital, but I was raised in Arlington Heights.
Okay.
And I love Chicago. It holds a place in my heart forever. It was too cold for me, so
Yeah.
I got out of there at 18 as soon as I went to college. I moved back after college. Then I went to grad school. I moved back after grad school because Chicago is always calling to me. I lived in the city both of those times, and then moved out to LA in 2013, I believe. I've been here ever since.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you get a taste of California, because I mean, you went to Stanford, right? So like, once you get that taste, it's hard to go back. It's hard.
I'm a warm weather person, so yeah. The in LA, the 75 all year. I can't convince myself. Not yet, at least.
Well, by the way, we sort of paid our dues. I mean, you live the majority of your life in the Midwest with the winters and the humidity and whatnot. It's like, okay, I got my stripes.
Right. Well, and my family's still there, so we go back often.
Right.
We have white Christmases, and we go back multiple times a year. So I feel like I'm still getting my little taste, but then I leave the -25 wind chill and I come back here and it's still 65 and I'm good.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So you guys have done such a fabulous job. And by the way, I say you guys, I mean, I'm talking about Unrepped, your organization. We haven't, I will have mentioned it in the intro, but we talked about you and Trisha, but so you've done such a great job of telling your story, your in terms of your marketing and your PR. It's a compelling story for sure. It's a timely story for sure. The proof is in the pudding. I mean, my God, the between the furniture and the artwork and the magic that you and Trisha are creating together, it speaks for itself. But running a business is stressful. Running a business is challenging. I don't, have to tell you. So talk a little bit about some of the challenges you faced and some of the surprises, good and bad, right? Yep. That you're dealing with these days.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, starting Unrepped for me was really a crash course in running a business because when we started it, I didn't even know if it would be a business. I didn't know if this was just going to be a one-time thing and then we're done. But we always say that it feels like we kicked a ball down a hill and spent the first 2 years just running to try to catch up with it. And for me, that meant learning 15 years worth of running a business in the course of 18 months. I was at home with my kids during the whole first half of the pandemic and then transitioned to let me do this part-time once we started. And then all of a sudden realizing this needs to be a full-time gig, and the growing pains on that were crazy, both personally and professionally. So we've just learned a ton of lessons in giving yourself grace, continuing to push forward, believing in things that you can't see. I think some of our biggest lessons have come out of the toughest times that we've had. So for instance, when we had to leave Sycamore, we only had a month's notice. And if you know anything about commercial real estate, that's not enough time to find a new place and sign the lease and get everything done and all of that. And we really felt like, how are we going to do this, right? Where are we going to put our businesses? But we just said, we're just going to do it, right? We're just going to go out there and we're going to see what comes. We're going to open ourselves to whatever, the possibilities are. And we ended up getting connected with Zach Lasry, who at the time we didn't know was working on this project to make this block a gallery center. But he showed us these buildings that were just in their most basic form, and we fell in love with the architecture of them. And it's turned out to be the biggest blessing, the biggest gift we possibly could have gotten. And has really, I mean, it's been game changing for us. And so I guess that's been the most surprising thing, is that whenever we feel like there's a block, it's really just a signal that we're about to take it to the next level.
Well, it's the diamonds are made under pressure, right? Like that's the thing, right?
Absolutely.
But trusting in what you can't see as well, right? Just trusting that, you know, if you have integrity and you have a pure heart and you're working hard and you're, you know, mighty forces come to your aid, you know, on some level, right?
And if you're being really true to yourself, I think starting this, there were so many people with so many opinions about the ways that things need to be done in order to have a gallery, right? You have to do A, B, and C, and this has to work this way. And both Trisha and I are not rule followers in any kind of a way. And so we haven't done any of those things that people told us that we needed to do. And what we found is that we're the most successful when we just do what feels right to us, and when we don't try to follow other people's rules, right? That's when it gets awkward and weird. But as long as we're doing what feels great, what we like, what we're excited about, that's how we stay on the right path. Yeah.
Well, and by the way, like that's absolutely the best and kind of the only way, because, you know, we all know that really at its core, when it comes to art, there are no rules. There are no rules when it comes to art. And I mean, there's lots of people that want to argue that point and tell you differently, but I'm just saying, based on my experience, what I believe, there's no rules. So how do you apply that to the art business? You know, and I've been saying for a long time, it's ironic, right, that essentially there's been zero innovation in the art marketing, art retailing, art distribution, you know, art sales. Like it's been the one model, White Cube Gallery model, that doesn't serve 99.9% artists. Right. So, you know, so where's the innovation? And that's what you're talking, I think that's what you're talking about, which is like, you guys are saying, no, we're going to innovate. We're going to break the rules. We're going to make up our own rules. We're going to do it our way.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So in a number of ways, the first one is obviously that it's not a white box gallery, that we're putting contemporary art together with this incredible postmodern furniture in a way that we think is so beautiful and we think draws people in and makes them able to see how they might live with the art. So that was the number one thing. Number two is that we sell it on a rolling basis. We're not doing shows all the time, or we weren't doing shows all the time.
Right.
Instead, we'd have artists give us a small collection, right? So that collectors can get a sense for what does the breadth of this artist's work look like. But it's not a solo show concept. And then we're rolling them in all the time. And it really has given us a way to almost lab out the artists. We can see what works. We can see what doesn't work. And so when we did end up doing more of a traditional solo show, our first one was with Corey Pemberton. And the only reason that we did that show was because we couldn't keep his work in the showroom long enough to feel like we were doing it justice, because it would just sell. The second it got on the wall, it was gone. And we really felt like these pieces are incredible and we want them to be seen. So let's do a more traditional model just to give them the time to be seen. Yep. But I think it's the furniture, it's music. We always have music going and we play what we love. And then it's keeping it fresh, keeping it moving, keeping people coming in all the time. There's always something new. If you come one week and then you come the next week, you're going to see something different than you saw, so that people stay excited about art, and then not making it stuffy. I guess that's the last piece of it, is really intentionally bringing people in, making it feel inclusive, and treating everyone who walks in their doors like they're someone who might want to own a piece of art.
Right. Yeah, warm and cozy is a great strategy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like my word's not yours, but like the vibe, the vibe that you're creating, keeping it fresh, keeping it welcoming, keeping it warm, keeping it, some level cozy. Like people want to be, they want to come back, they want to stay, and I love
and they
that.
do. I mean, we have so many people who come and find us and love it so much that they'll then just come to hang out. On a random, right? We just kind of want to be here, right? We want to chat, just like we're doing right now. We want to shoot the shit. Can I say shit? We want to,
you can say shit
here. Okay. And that's the idea. That's the change, I guess, from what we had seen in the art world before.
Right. Okay. So let's do this, because you and I could talk forever about all the great stuff that you and Trish are doing, and the story and the journey. I mean, there's so much to unpack. But really, the reason we're here, the reason you're in the game, the reason we're in the game here, is to celebrate and elevate the artists we love, right? So enough about us. Right. Let's talk about artists. Let's talk about the artists that you love. You guys represent some amazing artists, and I don't want to put you on the spot too much, because I know it's like, I don't mention them all. Like, I don't want to offend anybody if I forget somebody, because you got a long list. But artists who are listening, we love you all. We may not mention you all, not because we don't love you. It's just because we got limited time, and I'm putting Sarah on the spot. But let's celebrate and honor some artists that you guys love and are passionate about and are working with these days, because they it's all about them. We want to shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we haven't mentioned yet that this year we've been doing a residency at the Grand LA downtown.
Yes.
That residency is more of a white box idea.
Right.
And we have done 2 solo shows so far this year. We have 2 more to go. So our next show there opens September 9th, and that's Valency Jean-Patelli, who is a New York-based artist, the only New York artist of the 4, who's doing this incredibly beautiful mixed media abstract show that thinks about how Yoruba cosmology gets used throughout the diaspora, particularly by queer people of color, in creating community, in creating self outside of maybe traditional boundaries or conventions. And Valency's using textile sculptures, work on masonite, work on wood panel, sound that they've created that's going to be in multiple points in the space. It's going to be just a truly beautiful spiritual experience. So I'm really, really excited about that. It's a different feel than anything we've done before. So that's super, super exciting. And then our 4th and final show at the Grand Space is going to be Mancho 1929. Who is a Puerto Rican artist born in New York, but now living here in LA. And what's funny is his show really relates to Valency's from a completely different lens, which is that he's thinking about Latinx communities here in the States and how a lot of West African religion is sort of infused through Christianity in these really interesting ways in Latinx communities. And he's using the Botanica as the site where we find that happening, and thinking about the Botanica as a healing space. So they're tied together in this way that I love, but they're going to be completely different. So I'm excited about both of their work. I have so many other artists I can name. We just brought in a printmaker, Karen J. Revis, whose work is so beautiful and important. I literally just installed her work last week, and I'm super excited about her. We also have a painter, Leonard Maiden, who lives in Senatobia, Mississippi, who does these haunting portraits that every time we put them online, they break the internet. Just immediately, internet is broken because they have some magic to them that just really speaks to people. So I brought 2 of those in last week, and I have 2 more. Well, there were 4, but 2 sold, but 2 more that are coming from the framer that I just picked up today. So those will be in the showroom very soon.
Oh man, yeah. And those are just, I think, 3 or 4 of your artists.
The other 2 artists that we had at the brand who did solo shows, Corey Pemberton and Edwin Marcelin, have both taken off. They've both been with us since we opened in 2020. And both of them were sort of the same thing that I'm talking about with Leonard, just immediately spoke to people. And they're 2 of our best-selling artists. Edwin does abstract work. Corey does mostly figurative. Corey does mixed media. Edwin's a painter. Both of them are incredible. Next year, we're going to do a show with Kira Morgan, who's also been with us since 2020. There's so many people to name.
Yeah, there is absolutely. Well, we discover artists all kinds of ways now, right? Like, I mean, shout out Instagram, right? Like, how, and of course, word of mouth and referrals. I mean, how have you built your stable of artists? I mean, has it been sort of a little bit on Instagram, a little bit of word of mouth? I mean, how do people find you? How do artists find you? How do you find artists?
Yeah, it's a combination of places. Yeah. So Corey, I found at an art fair. He had just moved to LA and was doing an art fair. I saw him there and knew immediately that people would respond to his work. I also first saw Mancho. I saw Mancho first at the other art fair. Word of mouth, definitely. There are communities of artists. They're friends with each other. They'll, either one will say to me, you should check out so-and-so, or they'll talk to each other and say, you should contact Sarah. That's happened a couple times.
Right.
Deep Instagram scrolling. That's how I found Leonard.
Deep tracks.
Late night. I was deep on my
The rabbit holes are real. Yeah.
Yes. And then we have a submissions email, submissions@unwrap.com, where we'll take, and then, it can really, there are so many places. It really can be anywhere. And it's one of those things I get asked all the time. How do we know when we see one that's one that we want? And that's the harder part to put my finger on, because that's where it is a feeling. It's something that grabs you, and it's not always easy to say what it is, right? Because it could be different things. It's not as simple as, oh, this has great technique. It's just not that. It's not. No,
but it generally. I can't speak for you, but from my own experience, like for me, it does start with intuitive spark, like something. It's like, it speaks to me. Like, I don't know why, maybe, right? But it's like, I call it a wow factor. There's there's something in me that goes, wow, and then I, think about it from there. But it is, that's the thing, right? This idea that there's some sort of objective rule for what is or isn't good art is like, that's part of the bullshit, right? The reality is the art world is filled with subjectivity.
Right. That's right. Yes, that's exactly right. And I do feel like, without getting too woo-woo with it, people can feel the energy that an artist puts into it, right? And sometimes it's just as simple as that. We have one artist, Sachiko Bradley, who I laugh with sometimes, because the way that her work sells is all of a sudden 6 pieces will sell at one time. It's this interest, like she's the only one really that I know where it sells that way. And then it'll be a while where it'll be 1 piece here, and then it'll be like a huge, right? They sell all at one time. And I'll always say, are you doing something?
A ceremony, a ritual of some kind, right? Some voodoo that you do.
And she'll say, I was just putting my energy on, right? Thinking about, whatever it is, and people really do respond to it. So, I don't know how to quantify that, but it works that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it is it's such a fascinating dynamic, right? Or just experience. And that's, if there's anything that I try to encourage people is to trust their instincts. It's like, when it comes, not just, when it comes to selling art or dealing art or whatever, but in terms of, just regular people, so-called regular people, out there in the world, see something you like that speaks to you, take it home.
Yeah.
Just take it home.
Absolutely.
I was really discouraged. NPR recently had a thing. I was scrolling on my phone in the news, and there was this article that caught my attention. The title was something like "How to Look at Art," like something like that. Mm-hmm. And it might even have been "How to Look art in a Museum." But anyway, so I click on it, and it's a kind of one of those audio pseudo podcast kind of stories that NPR produced. So it was, obviously very well done and highly professional and world class in that way, from a production standpoint, a writing standpoint. But as I'm listening to this, it was only like 10 minutes or something, but it was, it was the journalist, and then there was a museum director, and then a curator, and all these stakeholders. And essentially the whole piece was talking about, how people should experience a museum and be in a museum and look at art and understand art. And long story short, what I part of the reason I was so discouraged was that the actual, it was so rudimentary. Mm. On one hand, it was very rudimentary, and on the other hand, it was also the same old shit. Mm-hmm. Right. But what got to me was that, NPR was publishing this story because they felt like there were enough people out there who were so incapable or intimidated or just insecure about going into a museum and just walking around and looking around and thinking for themselves. Mm-hmm. And I thought, my God, it's even worse than I thought. It's like we got a lot of work to do.
Right. We do. Well, because people have been told that there's a right way to do it. I think that's what's at the heart of it, is that somewhere along the line, people are told there's a way to make real art, right? There's a way to make good art. There's a way to look at art. There's a way to understand art. This is what you're supposed to feel about this artist because this is a good artist, and this is how you're supposed to feel. All that is bullshit, right? None of that is real. That is really not real.
No, that's the bullshit is real, but the value is less real. Right. Yeah.
Yes, and I mean that's a huge thing that Unwrapped has sort of set out to do, which is to bring artists who aren't being valued onto a platform where all of a sudden people can see their value. And this has been, I had this conversation with Corey when he was first starting out, before we even installed any of his paintings, and we were talking about pricing. And he was really afraid I shouldn't say afraid, but afraid of putting a price on it that I felt was more than reasonable, because the fear is that people aren't going to pay that, right? Right. And I think particularly for artists of color who haven't been looked for a long time, right? Where no one is checking for you. You haven't gotten any signals that your work is valuable. It's hard to believe that somebody would pay for your work.
Yep.
And I said to him, there is no difference between this painting and a $50,000 painting, other than the fact that the right people don't know about this painting yet, right? But it's, and that's literally all it is. And then, as we sort of went over pricing for his most recent show, he said something that was beautiful, and it was, I can't quote him exactly, but it was something like, when you said that, I didn't believe you, and now I see what you mean. right?
Right.
And all that took was just getting the work as it was, right? Because it was already absolutely fantastic. It was
Yeah.
just getting it in front of the right people. And
Right.
so for someone to say, oh, you know, nobody's blessed that, so therefore it's not good art, is literally ridiculous. And
Yep.
the best thing you can do is go find those people that no one's noticed yet, right? And
Oh my God.
right, like go find that guy on Instagram and throw him a couple $100 and get a masterpiece. Get something that in your house is going to look like an actual masterpiece. Because when he does get found, you're not going to be able to afford that.
Yeah. Well, by the way, I just have I have you know, there's no better example of what you're talking about than the story of Herbert and Dorothy Vogel, right? And they became gazillionaires. I mean, she was a librarian, he was a postal worker, or maybe I have that. No, she was a librarian. I think he was a postal worker.
Yep.
Right? They went around New York. Their thing was art, and they just start buying all this art from unknown artists that they loved. And next thing you know, their collection is
collection. Yes,
it's unbelievable. I tell everybody to watch that documentary because it's like if they can do it, we all can do it.
Yeah, because there's good art everywhere. There's so many incredible artists. I find them all the time.
But by the way, I'm gonna put you on the spot because you haven't mentioned a Chicago artist. So right now, you got one Chicago artist on that roster, right?
On my list. That's true. I know. I'm very LA heavy.
I know, right? We all are.
Yeah, it's easy.
You know, when I first moved, true story. When I first moved to LA in 01, my wife, my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, we go to this. I didn't know anybody except for her and her friends, right? So because I just moved here, and we go to this dinner, whatever, and my wife works in entertainment, and so I'm there with some other entertainment people, and I'm chatting, the two guys sitting next to me, very 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 affable, funny, guys, but also very LA, very Hollywood, and so they say, "Oh, well, you're new. You just moved here." I'm like, "Yeah, just moved to LA." "Where are you from?" I said, "Oh, Chicago." And they go, "Oh, the flyover city."
The what?
The flyover city.
Oh, flyover city.
Right? And I never heard that phrase before, right? This was 2001. I never heard that. I said, "Excuse me?" They said, "Oh, it's the flyover. So you fly over Chicago to get from LA to New York and back." And without hesitation, I said, "Keep flying over."
Yeah, exactly.
Just keep flying over.
Please keep flying over.
Just keep flying over. We do not, but
That's
yes.
Great. That's right. That's right. The second it starts getting overcrowded, and we don't want any of that.
No.
Chicago is the best kept secret. I mean, and quiet as it's kept, Wisconsin. I just went to Wisconsin and
yes,
a beautiful house on Lake Michigan, which no one on the coast happens to know looks exactly like the ocean, right? You can't just see to the other side of it. My brother's wife came, she's from New Jersey, and she apparently had said to my mother, "I'm going to paddleboard around the lake." And my mom was like, "I don't think you're going to."
No, you're not.
I don't think you're going to be able to do that.
No.
Fine. You guys keep taking your coastal AKs, and we'll be right here. We'll be just fine.
That's right. And but here we are in La La Land, and and there are so many amazing artists here, and there are amazing artists everywhere. And we got to focus, and we got to, for no other reason, just to be effective. We got to focus, and because that's the trick, right? When you have a big roster of artists, like you don't want anybody to fall through the cracks. I mean, there's a lot of pressure, right?
Yes, yeah, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of just relationship management. I spend a ton of my time just making sure that everybody feels seen and tended to, and with a huge roster, that's hard to do. We're part therapist. We're part therapists too. It's like we don't get to. That's right. That's exactly right. That's half the job.
Yeah. Well, I also I'm gonna tease you a little bit because you know the old saying, "The emperor has no clothes." My friend, the wall behind you is blank.
I know.
We need to get some. Oh, where is your art?
So this, I'm in actually my husband's office right now, and we moved into this house a year ago. And the plan is that this wall is going to be all bookshelves because right now all of my books are in storage in our garage, which is not okay with me because I believe we have to live with books just as much as we need to live with art.
100%.
But we needed to finish the upstairs first.
Right. It's
So
a process.
yes,
I
it's
get
a
it.
process. It's funny though because he has said to me, I'm never down here, and he has said to me, I need to just put something on my wall in the meantime.
In
And
the
I'm kind of
meantime.
like, I'm never in there. I don't think about it, right? Like, I don't care. And now that we've been doing this, I'm looking at my background like, oh, this is so sad.
Yeah.
That's a bad time.
Yeah, I couldn't let the opportunity go. I had to
That's
tease you
fair.
about that.
Fair.
Yes. Well, you know, we're too busy helping other people with their
I
art. So
literally
that, you know.
was going to just tack a nail on the wall and hang something just for, I mean, literally, just so you know, I'm not lying. I just ran out of time, but I was going to just nail something up really quickly, but I'm always
Well,
running.
I highly recommend your kids' drawings
Yes,
tacked on
that's
the
an
back. I
easy
think
way to
that's
do it.
nothing's there's no higher art form
That's right.
than kids' drawings.
That's exactly right. Yes, I love making my kids' work. Actually, I was just talking to my daughter because we're going to do a little salon wall of her work in her room that I'm excited about.
Oh, nice. How old's your daughter now?
She's 8 and my son's 11.
Nice. My daughter is 10, going to be 11, and my son is 6. We should have a play date.
Yeah, we should. That's very close. That's perfect.
Yeah, I've actually thought about that, like how, and we're actually in the process of moving next week, which I am not looking forward to, but I'm excited. I've been wanting for a long time. I've been wanting to do like family picnics, but the families are all artists and art, lovers, collectors or dealers, but primarily artists with kids.
I
You
love an
know,
art family
and,
picnic. That's so
right?
wonderful. Yes,
We got
yes.
to do that. We got to do
Yes.
that.
My kids would love that too because I'm constantly dragging them to shows and things, and they could just commiserate with the other kids. That's perfect. I love it.
Well, it's a plan. It's a date. We got stuff to do. I love it.
Yeah.
Sarah Griffin, I am so grateful that you took time out of your busy schedule to come and just chop it up with me here today. It is such an honor to know you, and I'm just so grateful that you and Trisha are in the world doing the work that you're doing. Some might even say God's work. I know I would say God's work. I know the artists you're serving would say God's work, and it is such a joy to
so
be in
much.
your orbit, and please come back and keep come back anytime. Doors
I
open.
absolutely will. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. We appreciate you using your platform to do this work. It's all good here. Anytime you ask me, I'm there.
Awesome. Well, before we go, and of course, all this stuff will be in the show notes, but before we go, tell our listeners where they can find you and Trisha online at Unrep.
We're at unrepped.com, unrepd.com.
That's easy, people. unrepd.com. You heard it here.
That's our Instagram too, at Unrepped.
I love it. I love it. Sarah Griffin, you're the best.
Thank you.